Alright, so inside of this Indiana Jones style crate, we have the highly anticipated Creality K1 3D printer. So let's take it out of the box and see what's going on with it. Alright, it's looking pretty nice. Let's do a general overview of the outside and then we'll dig into the meat and potatoes of this build. There's a ton of little plastic wrap to peel off of this thing. So if you enjoy peeling that stuff off, you're going to have a field day here. The overall look of this machine is just gorgeous. This whole top is just one giant die-cast frame. It's completely continuous all the way around, so that should really help increase rigidity of this top frame. It looks like these side walls might be aluminum extrusions. So this aluminum frame makes it really lightweight and stiff. This front piece appears to be glass, and then the sides seem to be some kind of plexiglass. Inside of this block we've got some of our filament, and we'll take the screen out of the box and just get that plugged in right away. So we've got this awesome little connector. I guess it just plugs in like this. And if you look at the door, it just has a little cutout for the screen. So there's a little gap so that you can open and close this door. And it appears that we've got a little bit of tacky stuff. So before I get started here, I'm going to wash those off just to make sure that it doesn't completely gunk up those linear rails. To do that, I'm going to use some of these lens cleaning wipes. I use them for all sorts of stuff. We just want to make sure those rails are nice and clean before we get started. This is more for the electrical engineers, so you can feast your eyes on whatever the heck's going on down here. Alright, so we've got a belt tensioner here. Pretty neat design there. We've got our Creality power supply. I'm not going to bother opening that up right now, but just so you know, it's not a Meanwell or something. Let's just go for that 17 or 15 minute benchy and see what we can get. And I want to run the calibration just one more time, just to make sure everything's all good before we get started here. So we'll just let this whole thing run. Unfortunately, it takes a little while. Just like with the Bambu Lab printer, it's got an extensive calibration routine that it likes to go through before each print, which I'm sure is really just there to increase your likelihood of getting a successful print. Alright, so I've spent a day with this printer, just unboxing it, testing it, taking it apart and looking at all the pieces, and based on my time with this machine, I think I've kind of figured out what it's all about. First and foremost, the K1 is a flagship printer. Creality has invested significant engineering, design, manufacturing, and marketing resources to let everybody know that they mean business and this is the best printer that they can make today. With Creality's typical design process, it's more like an evolutionary design. So, for instance, they started with the Ender 3, they made the Ender 3 Pro, then the Ender 3 V2, then the Ender 3 S1, and they're just incrementally adding more and more features onto their same basic frame of a printer. However, with this K1, they designed it from the ground up. This is an all-new frame, all-new motion system, all-new main board. This is just like completely designed from scratch to be as good as possible. And they really did their homework here. If you look at some of their past designs, like the Ender 3 S1, you know, it was missing some really important stuff, like an all-metal heat break, and the part cooling fans were kind of insufficient. I mean, you've got this massively overpowered Sprite extruder that's got a ton of potential for printing things quickly, but then you've got this tiny little part cooling fan that's just barely blowing little wisps of air onto your printed part. It's just kind of an asymmetric design, and it's begging to be upgraded and modded to unlock its full potential. So for most people that bought a Creality product, half the fun is just improving the printer. Printing stuff out to attach to it, buying aftermarket upgrades and putting things onto it. I mean, it's good fun, and it really helps you personalize the printer. But all of that was necessary because Creality released products that didn't have a fully fleshed out design. Like there's just these little design oversights or insufficient pieces of the machine that could easily be upgraded to unlock new levels of performance. However, with this machine, their whole goal was to make something that was high performance. This frame is super rigid and lightweight. This tool head is also very lightweight and can extrude plastic at a very high speed. The motion control system is corexy with these unique large stepper motors with large pulley gears. I mean, this thing is just designed to be as fast and high performance as possible. And they spared no expense when it came to upgrading all the different parts of this machine. And because of the attention to detail in the design of this machine, it's frankly a mechanical work of art. This thing is packaged so well, and the material choices are just excellent. I think this probably will outperform most Vorons out there, and Voron owners really pride themselves on having a printer that's super fast because they built it themselves using high-end components. Well, Creality decided, we're just going to make basically something with Voron performance, but out of mass-produced parts, and just crank them out for as cheap as possible, and give people these nice assembled printers. And, that's better for most people. I know there's always going to be the crowd that loves building their own stuff and just really enjoys working on their printers. However, this is something that you can just buy and unbox and start printing with at 600 millimeters per second. That's just absurd. And that speed, 600 millimeters per second, is slightly faster than what the Bambu Lab printers can do. So this is Creality kind of being like, you know what, we're going to one-up you and we're going to make it cheaper than your printer, and we're just going to try and take back as much market share as possible. And that's the other thing that this printer is all about. It's Creality trying to become king of 3D printers again and just be on top and just kind of be the dominant force. So basically, with this machine, they've done their homework, they've produced an excellent design, and made sure there's no weak points in the design. Everything is equally good so that you're able to print as fast as possible, and there aren't any obvious things that need to be upgraded. All of the obvious upgrades are installed from the factory, which is, kind of the way that it should be. I mean, just look how well everything is integrated and packaged together in here. We've got these LED lights that are just sunken into this back corner of the frame up top here. I mean, you can barely tell that there's room to put LEDs in here, but they've embedded them in such a way that you're getting excellent lighting, and it's just really well integrated into the whole machine. From this forward vantage point, you can't even see some of these linear rods on the side. So, you've got 3 linear rods, but they're just tucked away right behind this aluminum extrusion. And up top, you've got the linear rods tucked away up there as well. It's just really difficult to see what's going on with this printer because of how well integrated everything is. So this is a masterclass in packaging. Everything is really tucked away and efficiently put together, and it just looks really good. Alright, I could leave it at that and just tell you that this printer is awesome, but I think it would be better if I went through each component individually and showed you how it's awesome. So let's start with the frame. This is a aluminum die-cast top piece. This whole square frame is just a single solid piece of aluminum, and because it's a single solid piece, there's no welds, there's no screws, there's no little pieces that need to be bolted together. It's all just a single piece that's as light and as stiff as possible. And it's got all these little cutouts to include stuff like these linear rails and these bearing blocks and the LEDs that I was referring to earlier. They're just tucked away right up in there. So this thing is just excellently packaged and put together in a way that just looks super clean. And if you just take a look at this thing, it looks great. I mean, they really paid attention to the design and made it look as good as possible. But, it's also structurally efficient. You got this solid piece of aluminum up top, and you've got these 4 extrusions connecting the top and the bottom. And then again on the bottom, you have a single solid piece of aluminum. You've got a nice glass front door here. Then you've got some side panels that are made out of plexiglass of some sort. So, it's just a really well-built machine. It looks great, well integrated, There's not a whole lot more you can ask for. This print bed is a interesting surface. It took some getting used to for me, but it's one of these little like beds that you have to apply glue stick to. I think the Bambu Lab X1C has a similar print surface. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I'm starting to get used to it, and it actually works quite well. So, it's one of those things that'll grow on you. If you look at the bed leveling system, it's using 3 load cells here. So 1, 2, 3. That basically takes all of the bed leveling equipment off of the hot end and just offloads it onto the bed, which is a much better idea because the bed doesn't have to move fast. The hot end does have to move fast though, so taking that weight off of here and putting it down here, that's a good choice. I think that's something that I first saw on the Bambu Lab printers, so it's nice to see it implemented here. That's just going to give you slightly better performance, and it seems to work quite well. On all of the prints that I ran, I was able to get excellent bed adhesion, and I had no problems with things coming loose from the bed. When I ran the full test, where it was just laying down a first layer over the entire build area, it wasn't a perfect first layer, but it was a good enough first layer, and it didn't come loose, so not a whole lot to complain about there. The K1 is built around a corexy kinematic system. So the motion system here has a stepper motor here, and a stepper motor here. These are absolutely massive stepper motors, and you've got some really large pulley gears here, and that's helping you get those high speeds. One way to make the print head move faster is to spin the stepper motors faster. The other way is to put bigger pulleys on there. So it's kind of like if you have bigger wheels on a car. It's going to go faster just because one rotation of the wheel is going to move you further. So that's one of the tricks that they use to achieve that interesting blend of high speed and high acceleration. Just get some large stepper motors with a large pulley wheel, and I guess it's probably more complicated than that to pull off in practice, but that's pretty much what they've done here on the Creality K1. Another thing that I like about this machine compared to the competition is that they're using steel linear rods for the x-axis instead of making these out of carbon. You can hear these slide very smoothly. There's not a whole lot of noise coming from them, and they should last quite a bit longer than a carbon fiber rod. I mean, I've never seen a carbon fiber component in a wear situation like that, so I'm not sure how long it'll last on the P1P and X1 carbon. But, I think this is a much more traditional setup, having the steel with the brass bushings. I mean, that's a tried and true combination that we've been using in engineering for a long time, so that's well understood, and I think it's probably a more durable design. And I want my printers to last as long as possible. I don't want something that's made out of plastic and just falls apart after a year. Also with this print head, this is basically the standard type of print head that everybody has to use nowadays. It's using a CAN bus little plug here, so it's just a single wire that goes into the print head, and that provides all the power and data signals to be able to communicate with all the stuff on the hot end. This greatly simplifies the wiring, and it makes maintenance easier because if this cable were to break or wear out, you just unplug the cable from both ends and plug a new one in, and boom, you're done. Also, we've got a really small lightweight extruder here. It's got a Moons stepper driver, so it should be pretty high quality. It's just like a tiny little thing that gets the job done. Also down here, we've got what appears to be a ceramic style heater element with a half volcano nozzle. I mean, that's what I'm calling it. I call it a demi-volcano. It's halfway between a volcano nozzle and a standard nozzle, so it's just gives you slightly better melt rates. You can also see the part cooling solution. We've got this really nice fan there blowing a ton of air right into the nozzle print zone. And you've also got these fans on the side that are providing more cooling air. Just a really good design overall. The user interface is really good. We've got this touch screen here. So, on the P1P, you've got basically a remote control from the 70s. On this printer, you've got all of these nice little buttons here. Nice touch screen. It's good to have. I mean, this is kind of the gold standard in terms of a good user interface. And the other nice thing about this is it's got local storage, so you can plug in your USB drive and print something off of it, and it automatically puts the file onto your local storage. Then you have your history here, and you can reprint things. So it's just a really good setup, and I've really enjoyed using it so far. It even has an app and cloud functionality. I doubt I'll ever use either of those, but it's nice to know that they're there. I just kind of prefer to do the offline workflow, so I got my little USB drive and I just plug it in there, and that's good enough for me. And the craziest thing about this K1 is the price. At $599, it's an utterly ridiculous price point for this machine. I mean, that's very cheap for something that's this fast and this high performance. It's less expensive than the Bambu Lab P1P, but it's got a feature set that's more similar to the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, because it comes with a fully enclosed print area. It's got lights, the side part cooling fan, the vent fan in the back. Also, you've got the full color touchscreen to control everything, and the little door on the front. I mean, this thing is just fully loaded for a printer that only costs $600. I ran a lot of prints on here. I made this little rocket thing so we can launch this rocket. Here goes. Woo! Okay, so, that's kind of a fun little print. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty impressed with this machine. But despite all this amazing hardware, there are a couple of cons that I'd like to go through. For starters, the software works well enough, but it could definitely be tuned a little bit and just kind of improved in general. We're going to go English. Next. Oh gosh. Okay. The language took a little second to switch over there. I was worried I was going to have to do this whole thing in Mandarin. But that's something that's going to improve with time. This is a brand new printer, and they're going to do over-the-air updates to improve things, and it'll just get better. 2, there's some sticky residue on this top x-axis. So if you do buy one of these printers, make sure to check for any kind of sticky residue up here. I think they put some tape on it for some reason and then took it off, because I didn't see any tape, I just saw some residue there. And I just cleaned that up, and that fixed everything. So it wasn't too much of an issue, but if you do end up buying one of these printers, it's worth checking this top area just to make sure you don't kind of suck that up into the bushings, because then you might be having a sticky printer, which would be kind of annoying. So I was able to clean that up with no problem. Just take a look there and make sure you're not going to get everything all sticky. The third con is it's super loud when all of the part cooling fans are on. That's just kind of the price you pay when you've got massive part cooling fans that are able to cool things down pretty much instantly. So I'm going to experiment with some settings where you scale those fans back a little bit and you get a quieter printing experience, but you still get relatively fast print speeds. 4, the cable chain bumps into the lid and the side sometimes. So you can see up here, when this moves over to the side, this cable chain kind of gets trapped sometimes. I don't think it actually affects anything in terms of the print quality. It's just a little worrying to see. And I'm just concerned about it a little bit. It's just something to keep an eye on. And maybe on the production printers, they'll improve that a little bit. Or maybe I could come up with something like a little printed part that kind of guides this a little bit better and keeps it under control and prevents it from bumping up against the edge there. And the last con is another noise-related item. This bottom panel kind of vibrates a little bit during Z-axis motions. And also this back panel over here vibrates a little bit. So that just contributes to a slightly louder printing experience. It's not the end of the world, but it's just something that I like to note because I always make note of loud noises on printers. But overall, these are relatively minor issues, and a lot of these will be fixed in time. I think this new K1 series is going to be the new printer to beat for the foreseeable future, and hopefully we have a game of technological leapfrog where we've got companies continually outdoing each other, and we're just going to get better and cheaper and faster printers. So I want to give a huge thanks to Creality for sending this machine over for review. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that they sent this over to me. I've been quite critical of their printers in the past, but I totally understand why they sent it over to me without hesitation. Because, frankly, it's great. There's not a whole lot to complain about here. It's just a really good printer overall, and it's one that I could totally recommend, especially at the price point that it's at. Now keep in mind, this is just an initial review. Time will tell how these machines hold up over time, and I hope Creality is able to support their customers, and I'm really curious to see if we have a modding scene for these K1 printers. They're really good straight out of the box, so you don't have to mod them, But I know there's going to be some crazy people out there that just use this K1 frame as a base and then add all sorts of crazy aftermarket stuff to it to make it extremely fast and just reach some insane levels of performance. If you appreciated this first look video and are considering buying one of these K1s for yourself, consider using my affiliate link in the description below. That just gives me a little financial support so I can keep these videos coming. I'm going to be following this up with a more detailed long-term review because there's a lot about this machine to unpack and it seems to be just a really good printer, so I'm going to just kind of daily drive it for a while and to make sure everything holds up well over time. So if you want to see that video, make sure to subscribe so you can catch that when it comes out. Also, I have a pretty major channel announcement that I want to tack on to the end of this video, and that is I'm quitting my job and I'm going to be doing YouTube 24/7 from now on. I've got a lot of really cool content coming up, so I really hope you subscribe and join me for this video making journey. I also want to give a huge thanks to all of my patrons for your support. Quitting my job and doing YouTube videos full time is kind of a big financial risk, but having that steady paycheck coming in from Patreon really helped me decide that I think this is the right thing for me and I want to try this out and pursue this full time. So I want to give a huge thanks to everyone on Patreon. It really means a lot to me for all the support you give me, and I want to pay you guys back in terms of making more awesome content and more Patreon exclusive designs and content and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to support me on Patreon, there's links to that in the description below as well. But really, I want to thank everyone, from the lowliest one-time viewer to the subscribers, to the notification squad, to the Discord squad, to the Patreon kings and queens. I want to thank you all for your support, and without you, none of this would be possible. So I want to give you a thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my videos and my crazy rants, and the experiments are just going to get crazier from here on out. This has been another episode of Nathan Builds Robots, and I'll see you in the next episode.